Hey y'all, it's Ashley Bookishrealm and I'm back with another video. So I wanted to come here and talk a little bit about reading diversely, but I know in the past I've made quite a few videos on the importance of reading diversely, and in 2023 I'm not here to tell you anymore how important it is because I'm not wasting my breath. No more. I'm not doing it, because if you want to read diversely, you're going to do it. If you're not going to do it, then you're not going to do it, and I'm not here to tell you how to do it. Or I'm not here to tell you like why you should read diversely. But I have gotten questions over the past 6 months, whether that has been in DMs, comments, whatever, people asking me how do I prioritize reading diversely because I read so much. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, about some of the things that I do to make sure that I'm constantly picking up diverse titles, and how do I make sure that I am doing that without necessarily having to constantly track my numbers, if that makes sense. Okay, but before we get started, I would love to introduce today's sponsor for the video. So about a month and a half ago, I was reached out to by a kind human by the name of Chris. That is Chris. I hope you don't mind me revealing this, but Chris is from Canada, and for the past 1.5 years, he's been working with a group of people to create a superhero science fiction comic book, and they are having a Kickstarter. Okay, they're having a Kickstarter, and I love comics. I have a whole separate channel for comics, so y'all know that like comic book game is on fleet here. Like, I love comics, and so any opportunity that I can showcase a new comic, especially when it is from independent artists, independent writers, independent creators, like a whole team, like I absolutely adore that. So the theme of this comic is looking at what it means to do the right thing, to act courageously, to act selflessly when so many factors around you are trying to encourage you not to do so. I want to give you a little bit more information, and then I have a promotional video that I am going to switch to for you all to watch. This is a science fiction / superhero comic, and it's called Assemblage, and it's going to be launching in June. The first issue is going to be launching in June. So the Assemblage is a group of orphans who become a team of superheroes after being raised in another reality. Their first mission on Earth will involve a conflict with a fellow orphan who's working for a cosmic entity that delights in chaos and destruction. So you are invited to visit, which you should have seen me kind of having a screen with the Kickstarter on the page, but you're invited to visit the universe of Assemblage in their first sensational issue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the link to the Kickstarter pre-launch page down in the description box below. So I hope that you all enjoy this. Chris was kind enough to let me see the first issue, and y'all, y'all know how I am about comics, okay? I'm just telling y'all, I really appreciate getting the opportunity to take a first glance at this. The artwork is superb. It is. I love the coloring, the inking, the plate, like, and I'm very particular about those things. So I am not saying this lightly. It is beautiful, and the storyline is great, and everything just works so well together. So if you are interested in checking out the pre-launch of their Kickstarter, make sure I leave all that information down in the description box below. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to the promotional video so you guys can check out what this comic is all about. Also, if you have any questions about the Kickstarter, any questions at all, you can also email assemblage.comic at comicbook. Let me say that again, assemblage.comicbook@gmail.com.
The first issue of The Assemblage, a superhero science fiction story. Available June 13th on Kickstarter. Thank you for watching.
So I hope you have enjoyed that preview of the comic book. Like I said, all links will be down in the description box below. And let's dive into this video. Thank you so much, Chris, for you and your team for sponsoring this video. And I can't wait to see your comic book kick off. I wish you all the best and thank you for allowing me to view it. It's amazing work. Okay, so how do I make sure that I am reading diversely? I think one of the major things that I tell anybody how I make sure that I'm consistently reading diversely: practice. I don't use the term practice makes perfect because practice only forms habits. And so that's exactly what I think about when I am envisioning reading diversely, is that it is important to practice reading diversely and that it is a habit that is formed. So when you begin to read diversely, you will find yourself seeking out more diverse stories. And it just becomes a habit. It's not something that you consciously have to think about. It's not something that I have to actively keep track of. I mean, it's nice seeing the data at the end of the year when I do keep data, which 9 times out of 10, I'm horrible at that. We all know this, but it becomes something that is actually, you know, kind of natural. And when I say reading diversely, y'all, it's not only for me just reading diversely in terms of in terms of race. It can be religion, it can be books with disability representation, it can be reading translated books. I think that reading any book with different walks of life, different perspectives, diversity is a wide range of things. So one of the things I also have learned in the past and how it has informed my reading is to make sure that I give myself grace. I work, as you all know, in collection development, and we are a team that's very dedicated to making sure that we are promoting books that are diverse, reading books that are diverse, and supporting everyone in terms of patrons, the community, and people internally, and providing them with resources to read diversely. But one of the things I always tell people is that you have to give yourself grace. I think that, you know, I've always read stories outside of my own experience. However, have I always read as robustly as I'm reading right now? No, because I think that when you are provided certain narratives consistently, when you are used to seeing things that are marketed in a certain way, when people are given more opportunities over others, and that is what is primarily shown on the market, it is easy to fall into the trap of reading one experience or an experience that is only similar to your own. And it does take practice, it does take time, and it does take giving yourself grace. I think that sometimes people want to read diversely and then they jump into it and then it becomes more of a chore and a checkbox than reading naturally. And I think that that can possibly cause, and I don't want to say burnout per se, but it can make it feel like reading is a chore and then you get turned off by it and then you just go back to doing what you were doing before. I think the process in transitioning into reading more diversely is something that takes time. And once again, like, you have to give yourself grace. You're going to make mistakes. There's going to be years when it's like, I didn't really read as diversely as I wanted to, but next year, you know, give it another try. Like, be patient and be gracious with yourself, because even I've had to do that. Even like, for instance, I'm going to use myself as a perfect example here, okay? I suck at reading translated works. Most of the works that I read that are translated are manga. And granted, I read a lot of that in a year, but that's primarily being translated from Japanese, which means that most of my translated works skew very, very heavily to Japanese. And so I have been trying to find ways to encourage myself to read a little bit more diversely. And a lot of times I've been thinking like adult, but then I figured out maybe I need to ease myself into picking up, you know, translated children's works and, you know, translated middle grade and translated picture books, and easing my way into it, because I think my fear when it comes to adult titles is that I get overwhelmed and I don't know where to start, because I'm going to be completely honest with y'all, adult fiction, especially adult literary fiction, which I find a lot of translated stuff in adult literary fiction, and I've seen some and you can find it across all genres, but I've seen a lot of literary fiction, historical fiction that has been translated. And so I get intimidated. I'm not as strong in adult literature as I think people give me credit for, because if you can pay attention to my reading and my age categories, I very much so skew heavily now towards, you know, children and picture books and middle grade and young adult. And I'll throw in adult titles here and there, but it's not primarily what I read. So it intimidates me because I have to figure out how to navigate those waters. And so I feel like, okay, if I start here and I build myself up, then maybe I'll get to that point where it's more natural. The Around the World Reading Challenge has been helping as well, believe it or not, even though it was like, well, where's the first update? Literally, y'all have been asking for that update, and I'm here to tell you, baby, it is coming at the end of the month, but it also has been changed because I created a beast of a project without realizing I was creating a beast of a project. And you'll see why, because it's not just me reading the book. I think people would think, oh, she's just going to read translated books. No. It has been a cultural experience, which I'm perfectly fine with. Nothing wrong with that. Anyway, getting back to the point. So yes, it is a process. It takes time. You have to give yourself grace, and you have to be patient. I don't think that is synonymous with not holding yourself accountable and not realizing that you are lacking in a certain area. It's not ignoring it, but it's also being patient and saying, okay, I'm learning. I'm taking my time, I'm pacing myself accordingly. That way, you know, when I do make mistakes, I don't want to just give up. I think another point for me of like, you know, how do I make sure I'm balancing out my reading by reading diversely is that I have a passion to see other experiences. So I think that want in some ways like has to be there. You have to want to learn about an experience outside of your own. I am a big believer that reading builds empathy, especially when it comes to kids. I'm not saying that it can't happen in adults, but as someone who works primarily in youth collections, I can see the difference that books make in a child's life in building empathy. And so you have to have that desire and want to see an experience outside of your own. There's nothing wrong with reading about an experience that is similar or exact to your own, because, honey, not saying that, you know, books with all experiences haven't existed, but seeing the increase in some experiences, even in my own, has been very, very rewarding. But sometimes I want to learn about how someone else experiences life. I think it's hard to, let me put it this way, I think it's hard to accomplish reading diversely if that passion or that want is not there. Because if you don't care about anybody else's experience, or if you are in the vein of mind, I'm just going to keep it 100. If you are in the vein of mind where you're like, I just pick up whatever I read, it doesn't matter what the author looks like, this is not for you. Okay, this is not for you. Read what you want to read. I'm not here to tell you what to read, how to read. That's between you and yourself. That's you, yourself, and me. Like, I cannot make that decision for you, but I am telling you from my own experience this is what I do in order to balance what I'm reading and to make sure that I am being as inclusive as possible in what I'm reading. You have to want, the want has to be there. It genuinely does. And honestly, like, I think that one of the other major things, one of the other major components when it comes to making sure that I have a balanced reading year is not tokenizing. Not checkboxing, which kind of connects back to it not being a chore. I don't believe in reading diversity for the sake of diversity, so that I can check boxes and kind of feel like, okay, I've accomplished my task for the year and that's it. I don't think that is a way to kind of handle it. Like, the authenticity has to exist at some point. It just can't treat it as if it's a statistic. Because these are real people who have real experiences that are opening, and whether or not they are essentially creating themselves as characters, they're drawing from experiences here. And so I think you have to be authentic in the way that you engage with those experiences and not just reading it because someone told you to read it and you want to have a certain percentage or check mark every time that you provide your statistics to somebody. I think that in itself can be harmful. If you are authentically doing it and you want to see progress, that's one thing. But if you're just doing it because it's like, this is what everybody wants me to do and it looks good, Don't treat people and their experiences as if they're check marks and percentages for you to feel elevated about yourself. I think that kind of is, in a lot of ways, a little, not great. It's just my personal opinion. I don't think that's really a great thing. And the last thing that, with doing diverse reading, balanced reading from all experiences, however you want to phrase it, have fun. Have fun. Have fun. There are people writing from so many different experiences in every genre you can imagine. No matter what you like, I promise you there is someone who doesn't share your experience that is writing it. Have fun doing it. You've got to have fun, because it's what's going to motivate you to continue doing it. I enjoy, now I'm not going to say every book that you pick up you're going to love, because that's a lie. Because even there are diverse books that I pick up and I'm like, this was not it. Because here's another thing. All representation is not good representation. And I think that at some point we have to acknowledge that. I have had trouble acknowledging that in the past. Go back 3-4 years. I have had trouble acknowledging that all representation is not good representation, even if it is coming from that group. There are Black people who write stories about Black people and it's not good representation. So that is also something to keep in mind. Now, when you don't share that experience, it's kind of hard maybe sometimes, I think, to catch on it or to pick up on it, because it's not your lived experience, which is why I always say defer to people who actually have that lived experience, and they'll be able to give you a better perspective of, said issues with the book. I just wanted to put that out there as a disclaimer, because I'm not here to say that all diverse books are going to be instantaneous 4- and 5-star reads, because I have read books this year that are from diverse backgrounds, different, representations, whatever, and they have not. Child, it has been a miss. Like, far left. Like, it has been a horrible experience. And I am looking at you, Black Queen, the Black Queen. Your book was horrible. But I think that either way, have fun doing it. You've got to enjoy this. I think that reading should always be fun and it shouldn't be a chore. But I'm also a little bit more on the old school side, where I feel like I read a lot of times, not just for escapism, but to learn. Because I only have this one life and I want to learn everything that I can possibly learn. And granted, I can't learn everything, but I look to reading also as a learning process. And I felt very validated when I read James Baldwin's book with The Fire Next Time. I was about to say with the fire or not. Like, child, clearly I am tired. But the book is The Fire Next Time, and it was the essay Down at the Cross. And there was a specific quote where James Baldwin said that the poor are too, how did he phrase this? He said the poor are too tired and stressed out to have the time, and they don't have the time to sit down and read. Whereas the wealthy, who could be, assisting these individuals, simply buy books to devour them. They buy hordes and hordes of books to devour them, not to learn, but just for the sake of consumption. And so, which I had shared that on my Instagram. I was like, this is so applicable to us as a community, because people are like, I don't read to learn. I'm not trying to always learn something. And I get that. I think that you have to have a balance where, escapism and learning, a balance needs to exist, because I too, like, I'll pick up, Wings of Fire, fantasy about dragons, middle grade fantasy about dragons. What the hell? Granted, now there are some themes there that I could learn from, like nature versus nurture. There's a lot of that in there, and compassion and healthy boundaries, healthy relationships. There's a lot to learn from that series as well. But I'm not saying that everybody has to pick up, I don't know, Killing the Black Body, which I think everyone should pick up that book. But I'm not saying that in that frame of mind, like, that's the only type of books that you should be reading. But I think it is healthy to find that balance between learning and enjoyment, or escapism, because you can enjoy learning. So learning and escapism. But I also think it's a privilege to be like, I read to escape. I wish I could just read to escape as well. Escape this hellhole of being a Black woman in America, but here we are. All right, y'all, like I have been running out in this video completely, but I have been asked that question quite a few times. And both personal and social media wise, I've been asked that question. And so I just wanted to take some time to kind of answer it. I hope that makes a lick of sense. I hope somewhere in there you're able to find a nugget. It really, honestly, at the end of the day, there are no hard, fast rules to this. I think that if you are interested in engaging with more diverse titles, more diverse authors, characters, experiences, different age categories, different genres, translated, whatever, I think that if you're interested in that, you will find a way to make that happen. You will find the speed at which you need to, maneuver to make that happen. You will find the books that best fit you, whether it's a certain age, whether it's a certain genre. Like, you will make the decisions that are best for you. But that's just how I have grown over the years. That's how I have prioritized voices that are not only people who look like me or share my experiences, but people who don't look like me, people who don't have the same experiences, learning more about people that I may never meet in my life. Either way, I do think that you will figure out the best process and method that is best for you. And I'm just here to put myself as I guess, somewhat of example. Child, I don't know. Who knows? Child, I don't much know. Anyway, as always, if y'all like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, hit the bell for notifications, subscribe button if you don't want to miss another video. Don't forget about the Kickstarter information that's going to be down in the description box below. And if you're looking for ways to follow me on social media, if you're looking for ways to support me via Patreon, Amazon, whatever, down in the description box below. And I will be back with another video soon.